Well, we are a little ways past halfway point. We're going into week 11, and I'll tell you what, I'm wondering if anybody in the ABL is even trying to be to get into the playoffs. It doesn't look like it. This is Sports Hour. All right, so this week, last week we had some problems getting into um, we missed last week's Sports Hour series, so we're going to go recover real quickly of each of the things that happened in the last week's. I will say this is a big problem in this series so far, that the both. Let me see if I can get this up here. Yeah. That in week 10, it still has. We do still have the problem with the both teams, the Falcons, who have not even hit 800 points yet, and allowed 900, and the Hawks, who haven't let. Other than that, the NBL, North, South, West, and East all have done pretty well. I mean, in reality, the toughest division. I mean, at this point, it's hard to say who will be in the playoffs, who will win the playoffs, and who will be in it. Panthers and Saints are currently looking at possibly still being the head of the NBL North, even though the Panthers are currently still undefeated. They do have a tough week ahead of them, not this week, but next week. That would be in week 11. Week 10 wasn't a problem for the Panthers. It was actually one of the more tougher games, however. However, as for the ABL, really only the division leaders, with the exception of the ABL South, have actually had any chance of doing anything. Beagles, Supermen, Lions, Otters, kind of the leg. But to be honest, they're a little bit less wide. Currently, the record here is 74 wins versus the 79 losses plus. We've got 6 ties. So, yes. The NBL looks a whole lot better in the position. There's been a much better chance. For example, while the Panthers and Saints still have having it, even the Pirates and Falcons have been kind of low in it. Cardinals, Bulldogs, and Dragons are still in a pretty good situation, even though we are approaching the end of the season. However, for the Tigers, Browns, and Ravens, they all are in great shape to win that division, and make playoffs. And all of them currently are in all of these. The Tigers, the Browns, and the Ravens are in the playoffs currently. Indians are not in the playoffs at this moment in time, but they are still in the running. We'll look at the running games in the next week's Sports Hour, starting into week 12. So week 12, we will be starting to look at any of the teams that are out of the playoffs, which unfortunately we got 2 teams that are probably out right now, but even though we haven't minutes. Falcons and Hawks are pretty much out of the playoffs at this moment in time. And both of those teams can't win their division at this time. Their best possible record is 8-10, and that's assuming they win out the remainder of the weeks. So officially, assuming the Cardinals lose everything the remainder of the season, and the Bulldogs and Dragons don't win more than 3 games, maybe 4, then the Hawks could potentially take the division. Potentially. But if they lose this week, we're going to throw them out there because they can officially not make the playoffs at that point. Their only chance right now is to win the playoffs. And to be honest, I don't even think there's any chance. There is officially a chance the Hawks to make playoffs as of next week, assuming that few things happen. This requires the Tigers, the Browns, the Ravens, and or the Saints. 2 of those teams would have to lose every game from this point forward, and the Hawks would have to win. So it's a big if. And the Knights would also have to lose. Actually, the Knights would have a problem. To be honest, the Knights would have. So basically, all of the teams that are currently in the playoff position, the Knights, the Browns, the Ravens, and the Cardinals, and the Saints would all have to pretty much lose out in order for the Hawks even to chase the playoffs. Falcons can't make playoffs at all because they don't have the way of actually winning the division. The Hawks can only make playoffs at this time if they win the division, and if the Cardinals win next week, it doesn't matter. They can't win. They can't make playoffs. Period. But we'll talk about that in next week's point. The biggest teams right now, the biggest battle right now is the Tigers, Browns, and Ravens. Yes, they're all currently still fighting for first place. We are in this is the week 10 stats. And honestly, it's a pretty big fight out. I mean, the Tigers currently have, yes, and to be honest, actually this might be a little bit off. I believe this is actually a little wrong. I believe the Browns actually currently have the lead because of point-wise. Yeah, so this is actually a little bit off. Let me put that. There we go. That's correct. And so the Browns currently would have the playoffs, but again, in order for the Hawks to make the playoffs, to even have a chance, they would have to win the division. And they would have to, there's 3 things that have to happen. First off, everyone in playoff position right now, of the 3 teams that are in the divisional rankings would have to lose out, pretty much. Not quite have to lose out. They could win no more than one game. Actually, to rephrase that, to be honest, it doesn't really matter what happens in these things, because really what has to happen is the Cardinals would have to lose out, and the Hawks would have to win out at this point as of this week. If, because I forgot that doesn't the wildcard things don't matter. If the Hawks were to even make the playoff, the Hawks to make the wild card. Same thing with the Falcons, really. The Saints, the two Tigers, Ravens, and possibly even the Hawks would have to lose. No more have to lose, so they couldn't actually get up to 8 wins. If the Hawks do end up getting 8 wins, they have a chance. But if they lose, they are out of the playoffs. The same thing with the Falcons. But the Falcons only got one shot. If they lose any games, they don't have a choice. They're out of the playoffs at this moment in time. So basically, the idea is the Hawks have a chance, a very slim chance, of making the playoffs at this current time. They would have to win out, and the Cardinals would have to lose out in order for that to happen. But if any of these teams win, and I'm pretty sure they will play, then there's just no chance for them to do it. I'm pretty sure, just look at this. The NBL West. We're looking for if the Tigers, Ravens, or Ravens play each other. Yeah, Tigers. You'll only have, now here's the thing, that's the Otters. Hold on, that's the wrong division. So, yeah, Tigers. Actually, the good thing for them for the playoffs is that the only team that the Tigers have to play, let's assume the Tigers win all of that, win the games, it doesn't matter. But the Browns have to play the Ravens and the Tigers. So basically, the Tigers would have to win this game, and the Ravens would have to win this game. Would have to win this game as well. Bad news is it doesn't make any difference because the Ravens also play here. There's literally no chance if they don't win out that the Hawks have a chance to make the playoffs at this point in time. This has been done before. It was the Athens. The Athens were down to last place in division and ended up winning the last 8 games. They were down. They lost 10 games. They won the division at 8, 9, and 1. That was literally their position. So they did, in fact, make the playoffs, but that was in a completely different world, I think. I don't think this was exactly the same divisional at that time. All right, so moving on to the point about what happened this last week. The Falcons and Ravens played. Ravens won. And that was a pretty big. Now, I didn't get to do a Week 10 video for this, but I will mention that I did do these in a way that is. I did not get them all right. I got the Ravens right. I got the Lightning completely wrong. Yeah, Browns got crushed in that time. Beagles, I got that one right versus the Athens. Yes, the biggest game was this game here, which honestly does not show very well for the Panthers. The game of the week this week was, in fact, I didn't get to show it, the very last game. It was this one here. That was the game of the week. I forgot it, so I didn't show it, but this was the game of the week. And it was honestly a very close game. The only other game that could have been considered the game of the week, to be honest, would have probably had been the Panthers and the Pirates. Maybe the Dragons and the Dogs. But there was just no other team. The other team that was potentially in a good position would have been the Oilers and the Saints game. It was not, however, predicted put as the game of the week. But to be honest, the surprising is if you look at who the Tex beat Hawks, yes. And I believe if we look back at the Hawks scoreline, make sure I'm right. Yeah, you can see their highest score was 90, was actually a barely loss against the Saints. But otherwise, their highest score on average between these things isn't very impressive. I mean, looking at their average score just for the Hawks, they're only getting 74.2 points per game. And that is the third, by the way, that's the third lowest score. The Packers have a lower score overall, but they have done decently over us. The next lowest score would have been the Hawks, and then the Falcons, who had honestly not a great score in that grand. But honestly, it's not really the problem with the Falcons. The Falcons still have a pretty decent team. The bad news is that their defense is just lacking. For the Hawks, it's kind of even. So they're really not a good. They're not really a good team. They're not really a bad team at this point in time. But the big question for this week is: will the Hawks be able to still make the playoffs? They lose, they're out. Same with the Falcons. There's not much of a chance that the Falcons are going to have a chance at making even the wild card at this point, though, because of who they're playing next week. I also want to figure out whether will the Panthers still remain undefeated and go undefeated for the remaining season. I mean, looking at the scoreline for them, looking at this, they have easily the highest amount of points, 118, so nearly 120 points per game. They're already getting close to 1,200, which is literally the second highest score line, with the Bulldogs being the only one that had any close to that. It's interesting to see how that will work out in the end. All right, next week we got some interesting dilemmas here. First game of the week will be the Athens and Jets. It is a 20-point favorite to the Jets. However, I'm going to look back at the point where the Falcons and Jets played. They've only played one other time prior to the season. That was 2 years ago. In the Jets in the Athens' first year. The Jets won that game by a long shot, but they were 14-4 that year, so it wasn't really that impressive. If you look here, in this year, the Athens did actually. This was the year that we're talking about. The Athens actually did make it over to the Bowl in that year, but the Jets didn't qualify that year. Believe it or not, the Jets won that game, but they didn't win by much, and it wasn't very impressive. The Athens weren't in existence the year before that, but if you look at this, the last year the Jets absolutely got demolished them. So they've only played twice since then, and honestly, in this point, there's not much of a chance that the Jets stand. I'm going to have to go with the Athens winning this year, however, because of the fact that I don't see it being enough for the Jets. The Jets have not done very well. And looking what they have looking what the 8th and 10th versus the Jets. Divisional week. But the Jets have honestly not much of a score. I mean, honestly, it could be either way. I'm gonna go with the eighth in here, but that's only because I think they have a slightly better team. Now, that's not gonna say exactly what the stats gonna be saying because the overall doesn't necessarily show that. But the Jets do have a very strong defense, which has allowed them to win a lot of their games. Half of them, to be precise. But the other team is that the Jets here have a much stronger offense, and honestly, this could go either way. I'm gonna go with the 8th in winning this week, but I'm gonna predict 1 point. I don't think it's gonna be I think it's gonna be a very tough matchup. All right. Remember I said the Falcons had no chance of making playoffs for much? I don't know if I said that, but the Falcons have played the Panthers this week. We have an undefeated team versus a team that hasn't won a game. There's not much. There's not really much chance where I'm going to. You all don't know what I'll pick in this week, and that's going to be the Panthers. And I think it's going to be a blowout. 40-point prediction to my favor. Because the Panthers are heavily favored in this game. Yes. Though I don't think there's much chance that the Falcons will have any chance in this game. That will be Saturday, 1:30. All right, Colts and Tex. Oh, boy. This is a close one. I'm looking at what the Colts have. The Colts and Tex are both pretty close. Yes. The Colts are currently last in the ABL North. And the Tex are not much better, honestly. They're tied with the Bobcats, to be honest. So here's the deal. I have to look at what the other part of the division here, because the Tex have a really good defense. Has that shown up? I'm not really sure where to say that's actually shown up or not. But the Tex had a great offense, even though the offense doesn't show in the line. Their average score allowed. I'll go back to the. Let's see what their average score for the Tex is about 79 points per game. The Colts' average score line is about 88 points per game. I don't know why I even calculated that, but anyways. So, to be honest, the Colts do not see me as the team. Even though they have a higher overall rating, I'm going to go with the Tex winning this week. I'm also thinking the prediction's about right. I'm going to go with 2 points prediction. Ooh, Tigers are winner. This is the game of the week. By the way, all three of these are divisional. Yeah, I was looking at this. The Tigers and Werewolves are not divisional, but the Panthers and Falcons are in the same division. The 8th and the Jets are in the same division, and the Colts and Tex are also in the same division. Pretty interesting matchup here for this. Tigers and Werewolves are both pretty good. The only difference I can really say is the Werewolves have not done as well and were evens. The good news is that if I'm right about this, the Werewolves have won their last 3. They've been kind of iffy for the first couple of games, back and forth, and now have won the last 3 and done pretty well. As for the Tigers, have about the same kind of iffy rating, and they've gone back. They've literally gone back and forth, back and forth. They won the first 3, then they lost 1, then they went 1-2, then they lost 1, then they lost 1 and lost 1. Yes. They're not exactly in this position, but they have done some decent wins. I'm looking at their teams that they have actually beaten with a pretty good deficit. There are none. The biggest difference was actually their biggest difference was actually the Colts game, and they only won that one by 20. They only won that one by 13 points. So it wasn't like there was a big push. I might be wrong, but I think I might be a little bit off in that one. 84, 23 points, okay. So that was their biggest difference. Otherwise, they've been kind of back and forth all games. And it's kind of difficult for me to pick in this game because of the fact that this is a very close matchup. The Werewolves are favored in this game. I'm going to pick the Werewolves. But I don't know if this is going to be a very good experience. I'm going to go with 4-point prediction in favor of the Werewolves. Pirates and Saints, guess what? This is another divisional game. Pirates and Saints. This could be an extremely good matchup. There are some problems with this, however, that I might see this. Looking at the Pirates, the 3 teams that the Pirates have beaten were the Angels, not necessarily the best team, the Cardinals, wow, and the Athens. Not really that impressive. The 3 best teams that the Saints have beaten were the Angels, the Otters, and the Lightning. The Dolphins were pretty much there. I have to go honestly with the prediction, looking at what they have done of the last couple schedule. I honestly feel that the Saints are much better in much better days. I don't think the Pirates had a bad team. It's just the fact that I think the Pirates are going to be not as good as the Saints. I mean, looking at what the Saints on average have about 80 points per game. The Saints don't do much better, but they do allow way less points, and in fact, it's only a difference of 1 right there. But for the Saints, but I have to go with that being the prediction for this, and I go with the Saints winning this game. I'm gonna go with about 4-point prediction. Bulldogs and Giants. Let me see. Bulldogs and Giants. Not a division. It's not a divisional game. I have to say this is going to be an interesting fight, honestly. Mostly because both these teams are really, really evenly matched. Now, the records don't show that. The Bulldogs have a much better much less likely to lose this game. They're only 4-6, but they have scored a whole lot of points, and that is what the advantage is of that. The advantage of that team. As for the Giants, they've scored a decent amount of points. But I have to look at what happens with the Bulldogs, who have scored a difference of almost 100, over 150 points, versus the Giants, who've only scored a difference of 21. And I have to go, this is going to be a very tough game. I want to give favoritism to the Giants here, but I have to be realistic. Looking at the stats and everything like that, the Giants have a really good offense. But the Bulldogs do seem like they're going to be much beside him. I'm going to go, although I hate this, and I'm really hoping I'm wrong with this, the Bulldogs winning this game, and I think this is going to be a very tough game. I gotta go with a 1-point prediction for this in favor of the Bulldogs. I could see this game going either way. We got the Westville and the Dogs. Ugh. Dogs are 3-7 right now, only scoring an average of 79 points per game, give or take, versus Westville, who are scoring about 87 points per game. They're both really bad teams in the context of points. Westville looks worse, to be honest, in the context of everything else. Dogs look a whole lot better. But I'm going to go with Westville here, and I think the Westville will have a much better shot at winning this game, because they're more of an average round team. While the Dogs do have a better team on paper, I don't think that's going to show up for this week. I'm going to go with the Westville winning, and I'm going to go with a 2-point prediction. It's going to be a very interesting game, I think, honestly. That could go either way as well. Ravens and Bobcats. Okay, Ravens. Ravens are 7-3 right now, scoring exactly 888 points. A lot of eights. And have allowed 850 points. Versus the team they're facing, the Bobcats. Yeah, the Bobcats just don't have it. They're 3-6-1. They're scored 799 points, and I've allowed 840. It's going to be tough for me to predict this. I really feel like this could be an either way game, but I honestly think it's going to be a much better chance for the Ravens to win this game, even though the Bobcats do have a better rating. I'm going to go with a 6-point prediction here. All right, Cardinals and Dragons. This could have easily been the game of the week, if it weren't for the fact that they are in the same division. To be honest, I could have picked this either way, but the Cardinals and Dragons are really tough teams in here. However, the score line doesn't show that here. It's very much in favor of the Dragons. However, I don't think that's very fair for the Dragons at this point. And looking at what the Dragons' scoreline is, they're scoring 82 points per game and allowing less points, versus the Cardinals, who are allowing more points. But I have to look at their schedules, and that's the big question here. Which team had a tougher schedule at this point? Cardinals have a 2.27, which means it's a much easier schedule. And the Dragons had a 2.83, which is a much tougher schedule. So, looking at the first four, let's just go with the first 4 games where there was 3-1 and 2-2. That's about the closest we can get for that. The Dragons just don't show up here. They just don't seem to be teaming it. Looking at the next 6 games, they really didn't show up at all. They are not doing well at all. Versus it's other than their loss to the Lions, which is not surprising, and their loss to the Pirates, they have a much stronger schedule and basis for this win. I have to say, Cardinals, you're probably going to win this game. I'm going to go with a 6-point prediction here. Predictions don't mean anything, but Angels and Hawks. If the Hawks win, I will go ahead and I don't even know what I would do, because the Angels have a much better chance at winning this game, because there's no chance for the Hawks to win this game. They're only scoring 74 points per game, and the Angels scoring an average of 90. I'm going to go with the prediction of 8 points. Even though it does appear the Hawks are favored in this game, I would not think they're even close to that. Knights and Supermen. Knights are 6-4. They have a pretty decent schedule lineup. Well, the Supermen are slightly, are 6-3-1. They're slightly lower, but they're not too much lower. Yeah, this is a pretty tough matchup. I have to go with what I've seen over the last couple of years for those last couple of games for those two teams. We're looking at the ABL East. For the Supermen, have actually has some defense. They're only, in fact, even their 3 games that they lost, they scored fairly well. And to be honest, that really shows up they're going to be in a really good position to win these games. Versus the Knights, who are in the NBL East, or NBC East, do I have it here? Knights have been really close as well. However, the few games there were 2 games that really stand out to me in that regard. The Angels game, where they should have done really well, they did not. And the Tigers game, which they didn't do terribly as. These 2 games kind of show the whole picture. Versus you had the Supermen having all of their games pretty close. I have to go in this case for this to be the Supermen's game. Beagles and Dolphins. I'm gonna go with the Beagles here, but that's because the fact is I don't think it's. Supermen Knights, we're gonna go with 5-point prediction. Beagles have done very well, and I also think there's a good chance that they will win the entire thing. They have, by the way, made the playoffs before. In fact, they made it to the Bowl twice in the last 2 years. They're kind of repeating the process here of making the Bowl. Sure, they were not the best team, and sure, they were not the... Yes, but they have made the Bowl in the last 2 years. And even though they lost both times, they were playing the Panthers. Others who haven't lost a game in, 300 and like 46 games or something like that. I'm gonna go with the Eagles winning this game, going 4 points. Lions and Packers. Lions and Packers are a divisional game, I believe. Yes. This could have easily been the game of the week if it wasn't divisional. I'm trying to make sure the divisional games are not put into the game of the week, unless it's very obvious that there's games should be the game of the week. Like Maitland Mitchell in the season will probably see a lot of game of the weeks. The Lions and Packers. Let's see, that would be the ABL West or AFC West. I'm looking at some of these teams. Honestly, the Packers have had a pretty good scoreline. Their 4 games that were really tough were all wins. The Giants, the Lightning, were both wins in the last teams. They lost against the Saints, big deal. And the Knights were not they definitely lost against that team. However, with the Lions, they have done really well and they have won pretty much every game against. This could be a very tough game in certain regards. But I just don't see the Lions not winning this game. It will be a very close game in the end. I'm going to go with a 2-point prediction in favor of the Lions. Lions and Indians, not going to say much about this game. Lightning are 5-5. Indians are currently, let me check on that, 3-6-1. I'm going to go with Lightning all day, mostly because the scoreline just doesn't show up for the Indians to win this game. I'm going to go with 2-point prediction. Chargers and Browns. Chargers are 2-7-1, with only an average of 79 points per game. Versus, you have our lovely Browns, who are 7 chance. Not much of a chance. There's just an easy scoreline to predict. I'm going to go with an 8-point prediction. Even the Chargers had a higher level, there's not much of a chance that the Browns don't win this game. Otters, with my prediction for the Otters to win this game. UNC only has 4-6. They're last in the division. They're only scoring 86 points per game on average. Versus the Otters. This is a divisional game. Who are scoring an average of that is not a divisional game, never mind. Who are scoring an average of 75 points per game. This could be an either way game. I'm going to go in favor of 12 points for the Otters to win this game. Those are my predictions for this week. I'll be back on next week and we'll be starting to do little predictions about who might make the playoffs, who won't be in the playoffs, who's out of the playoffs, who's in the playoffs, and all those sort of things for that. Speaking of which, before we get too far, I will point out Susan Thatcher does still have 3 weeks left on her suspension, and it, according to the Knights coach, or owner, whatever you like to call it, she probably will not play the rest of the season. But otherwise, pretty much everyone is back in the game, and no one is injured at this point. Wanda Richards is not injured. Let me take that off. She is just not on the list at this current time. Thank you guys for watching for Sports Hour at week 10 and 11. I'm sorry we had to skip a week because we just didn't have the right resources to do it at that time. I will see you guys in the next Sports Hour video, and don't forget, guys to look out for the next video and put your own predictions every week during Sports Hour. Thank you guys for watching episode Sports Hour.